So, welcome to What Has Cyber House Party Ever Done For Me Lately? Originally, we wanted to get the community together at a difficult time. Now the aim is to keep the community together at an uncertain time. So, Cyber House Party has some core goals and values which seemed popular with the audience at the launch event. So, we've carried these ones over this time. What we didn't know is that CHP could actually play a bigger part in some people's lives, which there were certain people who contacted us after the event, which really made the organisers and the founders pretty, it was heartfelt words that made us really happy. So what we all want to do is make sure we're enjoying ourselves and we're really having a good time tonight. So I'd like to introduce you to Nikki Webb of Custodian 360, who has already donated, by the way, so keep digging deep if you can. The charities, again, I'll remind you, are NSPCC and Minds. But thank you, Nikki. It means a lot that we meant a lot to you at that time. So, Nikki, I've got a question for you. What has Cyber House Party done for you lately?
Well, last Cyber House Party was a huge hangover, and I'm hoping that's going to be the same again tomorrow. I got in touch with you guys after the first one. It came at quite a prominent time for me mentally. I was in a really bad place. Thought I was failing, work, relationships, mother, everything. And I joined. I only found out about it the day before, and I joined, and I had the best night I've had since lockdown started. For me, mentally, got up the next day, steaming hangover, but with a whole new drive. And I partied the night away with some awesome DJs, and I watched some amazing people speak, and it just made me realise that I wasn't alone. And I'm really, really lucky to be part of this great community, and more than happy to have got behind the second one. And I really hope that everyone digs deep and supports this fantastic, fantastic idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. It also does feel so good for somebody to give you that type of feedback with an inaugural event that came out of pretty much nowhere. We raised some money. We want to keep doing that. We want to keep the community together, keep the spirit that's going in such uncertain times. And you know what? I think we're all coming together, which is really nice. And I hope to see all of you soon, but I don't think that's going to be possible in the next few months. But let's say 2021, definitely there'll be another Cyber House Party, and hopefully we can do it in person.
Awesome. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great night. Keep having a great night.
So, hello and welcome to the session called What's on Your Mind. We're going to be talking about mental health in the cybersecurity industry. And we're going to be talking about it from lots of different angles, from people's own personal experiences of this issue, and also corporately what places can do as employers, can do for their staff, can do for their teams. So whether it's something you've encountered or not, this session is going to be relevant for you. Obviously, we are going to be talking about mental health issues. This is sometimes quite serious stuff, but don't worry, we are going to be talking about places where people can get help. As I say, both from a sort of corporate kind of employers helping their teams kind of way, but also where individuals can get help as well. So if that's what you're after, plenty of advice for you there as well. We've got a fantastic panel lined up who come at this from all sorts of different angles, which is a great thing for a panel to have. We have Lisa Ventura, who's the founder of UK Cybersecurity Association. We have Simon Lacey, who's a cybersecurity consultant at Cyber Risk Management Group. We have Manoj Bhatt, who's head of cybersecurity and advisor at Telstra Purple. And we have Tash Norris, who's head of cybersecurity at Moonpig. Tash, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. I just wondered, how did you get interested in this? What sparked your interest in mental health?
Thank you. So I heard a talk from someone called Amanda Berlin at B-Sides Leeds a little while ago. And Amanda co-founded mentalhealthhackers.org, which is a wonderful institution. And she talked about recognizing, I guess, various mental health afflictions in different people. And it was a real moment of reflection in me of I guess, both times when I've perhaps maybe underestimated my own feelings and experiences, but more importantly, I realized that I didn't have the right tools and equipment to recognize that in my team. And especially as we go through various and even more impending lockdowns, and we navigate our new realities, and we now live at work. To me, it's highlighted even more how do we better recognize the challenges that our friends and our colleagues and our team members are having, especially in a role that can sometimes be relentless and scary and full of pressure.
Indeed, indeed. I love that phrase, live at work. I feel like I live at work at the moment.
Yes.
Simon, interestingly, so you're a freelancer, you're sort of sole kind of trader, as it were. How do you come at this? What's your sort of angle on this, as it were?
Yeah, well, I'd always sort of worked in the corporate world, in the NHS and various other organisations, and always felt a certain degree of pressure, and beyond sort of the usual sort of life knocks that happen. And in my late 40s, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So I'm one of those people who are neurodiverse, as they say. And actually, there's this very strong link there between mental health and neurodiversity. And of course, if you're not being authentic to yourself, then you're going to find it difficult to fit into a box that the corporate life gives you. And it was quite interesting, the conversation we had as a warm-up for this is that some of the guys saying how difficult they found lockdown. Well, I guess I'm perhaps a little bit different. I found lockdown one of the easiest things I've ever done. So I think that sort of illustrates how different everybody is, whether they've got mental health issues or whether they're neurodiverse or not. We're all different. And that's really my angle for this, really, is, my issues have hugely impacted my life without me knowing what the issue was. But actually, it's also maybe the person that I am. And I think that's a real positive for me. It's given me the skills that I have today.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, we'll come on to the whole how people are finding working from home and the joys and pains of it, I suppose, later on. Thanks, Simon, for that. Manoj, where do you come at this from? Because you're coming from a slightly sort of corporate sort of team management angle on this.
Yeah, I suppose. So, Jeff, from my perspective, so I have been going to therapy for over 8 years. So I've been a big advocate of mental well-being, but I've also experienced that with my teams as well. So I think that's really certainly something that I've experienced with my teams more recently, and having just completed a mental health first aider course as well. So that's given me a number of different elements and skills that I've been able to look at. But I think from my perspective, I've recognised that I've tried to do a lot around this. But interestingly, I'm still learning as I go through. So I really wanted to kind of share some of the lessons that I've experienced with my teams and just corporately what we've been through. And contradictory to what Simon's kind of said, interestingly, we've really struggled as a team during lockdown. So, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And I think that's what makes us all very individual. Some people have enjoyed it. Some people have struggled with it. So yeah, it'd be great to kind of talk through some of those.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to come back to the mental health first aider course as well. I think that's a really interesting thing to chat about. Let's go to Lisa, though, as well. Again, you're coming at this from sort of a slightly sort of sole trader, freelancer kind of perspective as well.
Absolutely. And from my side, I've had a lot of bereavements and a lot of knocks. And it's seemed to be that sort of one knock, one thing, one bereavement after another. And particularly around 2013, 2014, I seemed to be forever in funerals. And that actually started with the stillbirth of my son in November 2013, and it went on and on and on from there. And he was my only child, so I don't have any living children. And I do a lot around that resilience and that thing of being able to separate everything that's happened from that bereavement perspective. And like Manoj, I've also been in a lot of therapy, a lot of counselling, and was also diagnosed with PTSD as a result of the birth of my son, because it wasn't just the fact that I had a son that was stillborn. The birth itself was very traumatic, and that I have those flashbacks even today that I have to deal with. So I'm passing on, I'd love to pass on any of those things from a resilience perspective, and how to kind of manage those things that happen to me on a day-to-day basis throughout my work life. And yes, I found lockdown pretty challenging as well.
Manoj, I mean, you've been very open about your experiences. Is that something that you sort of shared with your team, and do you think that's part of that helps to sort of say, well, look, I've done this? Does that open up a conversation with people?
It really does, and I think I'm also quite open with my team about my vulnerability, and I think that's really important. Even as a manager, I had an experience 2 years ago where I lost my younger brother to suicide, and he was aged 30 at the time. So I think being really open with the team, everything that I've experienced, also enables us to have an open environment where they can talk about their difficulties. And I think that's the key thing really for me, is about everybody being open and honest, because we're all human. It doesn't matter whether you're a manager or a leader or, whoever the staff members are. I think the whole concept that I believe in is about creating an environment that people feel open and transparent in talking about their feelings. And I think that's really what I want to achieve.
Yeah. And again, I'm so sorry to hear about the experience with the suicide. Simon, I want to come to you on this. You've had this diagnosis. As I understand it, the diagnosis happened after you'd kind of left corporate life and you'd gone out on your own. Is that right?
No. It was the thing that prompted me to walk away from a nice, secure career and go, hey, there's a cliff over there. I'm going to leave. I'm going to see if I can grow my wings on the way down.
That's a really striking thing. So do you think, was that a decision then? Did you think, well, actually, with this diagnosis, I can stay in corporate life? Or did you think, actually, with this diagnosis, it makes sense for me not to do that and to go off on my own?
It was a very freeing experience, the diagnosis, because I think I could have stayed in corporate life, but it was going to be, it was uncomfortable. It's like wearing the wrong size shoes. If your shoes are half a size too small, you can manage, but you don't want to run a marathon in them. And that was really, for me, was that opportunity to go out and actually be an authentic version of me. And that was a hugely freeing. I mean, again, that my dad was very ill, and I got a chance to spend sort of a lot of time with him towards the sort of end of his life, and really picking up on that comment there about the vulnerability. My dad, as a severely disabled man for much of his life, had an accident when I was 3. He always showed me that actually vulnerability is your strength. Building on that, to go into an environment where I was free, I've been open about it. I've worked with clients, said, well, can we just slow the conversation down a second here because I'm dyslexic? Right. And I made a vow to myself that I would be honest and authentic to myself about that, because I'm not ashamed of the fact that I'm nervous. As I said earlier, it gave me a lot of my strengths. And to the people around me, that's the only way we break down some of these stigmas. I've worked in a past life in mental health. The only way we break these stigmas down is being honest and open with them. And I guess some of the guys hear some of their stories. It's you break that down, the bit that people don't know what to say to you. I've got mental health. I'm suffering with anxiety at the moment, and people don't know what to say to you. And I don't think being in a freelance environment, I'm still a dyslexic person. Whether I work in a corporate environment or outside of that corporate environment, I'm working with clients. But if you just explain to people, sorry, if we just slow that down a second so I can get the notes down here, and everybody without exception says, absolutely fine, no problem. Or they'll say, oh, my best mate's dyslexic, or and it really does open up that conversation and builds that rapport. If nothing from a business one, it makes you realise that they're dealing with a human being, not just a suit sat there.
And Tash, have you found that as you've got into this, has it helped open up the conversation, or is that still a bit of a struggle to kind of get people to, change into that gear, as it were?
I really struggled at the beginning. I remember once fairly early on in my career going to my manager and saying, my box is full. I didn't have another way of explaining that I felt overwhelmed and anxious. And so I said, my box is full. I can't fit anything else in my box. And I got, I guess, a little bit of empathy, but then very much still, well, you kind of have to just still do this, but also perhaps be a little bit less emotional about it. And so that's by no means a comment on a particular company or people, or even how I think women in security are treated. But it's certainly, the way I interpreted it was, gosh, I better become stoic and not talk about my own interactions and how I feel.
So this was just the workload you had in your day-to-day life, but also the extra stuff you'd taken on with the mental health stuff. Was that
absolutely, yeah. I just felt overwhelmed, and my box was full. It's the only way I could explain it. And then as I continued to grow in my career, I in a new role got some feedback of, hey, Tasha, you should show a little bit more vulnerability. And that for me was really freeing, as I'd kind of lived through a lot of my career thinking I need to fly this women in security, women in tech flag and not show any emotion, anything that makes me come across as emotional or talk in any way about how I feel. And being given some direct feedback by someone quite senior saying, hey, look, I'd love you to show some vulnerability, for me felt really empowering. And so for me, that was a moment to start kind of breathing that same reality into how I talked, but also to my own team as well, of like, hey, it's okay to show some vulnerability. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us more approachable. And that for me really started a piece around, okay, now how do I recognize when their boxes are full, when they feel like they can't do anything else or do any more, especially if they might feel like I used to, which is I can't tell anyone my box is full because it might make me look bad.
Yeah. Lisa, have you experienced that? I mean, tech security, I think we can all agree is, still not entirely gender equal, however you're defining gender and sexuality and so on. But, have you found that? Is it more difficult to get leeway in this because of the people you're confronted with often, working with often chaps?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from my perspective, because of dealing with my dad's ill health with a very rare autoimmune condition, I've always had this thing, a lot of anxiety around being seen to be a bit unreliable, even during lockdown, if I've had to postpone a call or rearrange a call or a meeting or something like that. And that's something I kind of really struggle with. And having that sort of vulnerability to be able to admit, there's a very valid reason I'm doing this. It means I've got to be on a call with my dad and his specialist, or speak to the GP, or speak to the district nurses, because he's got a huge team of medical professionals around him because of his condition. But I still have a lot of anxiety around that whole, will I be seen as being unreliable if I have to rearrange this particular thing? And I struggle with that a lot.
I think, if somebody calls in and says, oh, I've broken my leg, I was out, on my bike, I broke my leg, we get that. It's like, okay, broken leg, we kind of understand that. It still strikes me that if you phone up with a mental health issue, there is still this sort of, what kind of mental health, we don't really have the sort of understanding or framework of it. Manoj, is that where the sort of first aider course comes in? Do you think that's an attempt to sort of, okay, we're going to try and treat this like we do, or similar to how we do with physical issues?
Yeah, I think so. I did the first aid course, particularly with Thrive with Simon Nichols, and it was fantastic because it really brought to life things that you can't necessarily see. And as you say, I think what was really interesting, things like stress and anxiety, but other conditions that actually you can't see. But I think what I took away from that, Jeff, more than anything, was everybody is individual. So everybody has their own, and I think Tash picked up on the box. Everybody has their own capabilities with the box, and then, some people it fills up quite quickly. It also is work related and personal related. So I think everybody's got stuff. The key thing is being able to have an environment where you can release that, talk to other people. And I think that was the key thing I took away from the mental health first aider course, is the volume of help that's out there, but also the fact that people aren't alone through this. But, and I think we've got a number of people on this call who've all been through a number of different things. And I think we all share that. We all share that vulnerability. We all share life experiences that have really knocked us. And I think work on top of that, and COVID and lockdown and a number of other things, it's a stressful time. It is a stressful time. And I think that's where, as a community, I think we really have to help each other and talk to one another.
Let's talk about working from home then. Simon, let's come to you, because you've made a point that I've heard actually a fair few people make, which is actually lockdown had some advantages, had some good points. Do you find you're alone in that, or other people saying the same thing to you? What's your sense?
I think it's it's back to that huge thing of people being different. I've got friends who have really missed the work environment, and others who have seen it as a real blessing to be in a different environment. I mean, I think my personal perspective is that fairly early on, and I run a YouTube channel called And Then the Clouds Break, and I recorded a vlog on it, because actually this is happening to me. This has happened to all of us. I can't change what's happening in terms of a global pandemic. So therefore, me losing sleep over it seemed completely pointless. So, okay, what can I do here to get the best from this environment? So I did lots more running. I ended up running myself into an injury, which was probably not clever. And I got up one morning, looked in the mirror and thought, I'm going to run a half marathon today. Just went out and run a half marathon because I could. And sitting on the deck in the back garden and watching the red kites. I'm lucky enough where I live, I have red kites overhead. And I could not actually just watch them, but I could listen to them. We normally can't hear because of the traffic. So they were all very small things that I latched onto fairly quickly, for me, as a way of managing the situation and letting go of what I couldn't influence.
It's interesting, yeah. But I mean, Tash, going to you, you've got a team of people. Obviously, if one of them decides to do a half marathon one day, you might be wondering why they're not on the course. How do you sort of manage that? The fluctuations of some people going, yes, this is good, some people struggling. Does it vary by person to day, or do you generally find one person is like this with it and another person feels like that about it?
I think it can vary. I think it varies for all of us, right? We're stability. And so naturally we have peaks and troughs. I certainly have days where I feel better or worse about my own experiences during lockdown. But I think it's hard. We certainly have to work harder on how we recognize it in the team. For me, a big piece is making sure that I look out for changes in behavior. So if someone all of a sudden has trouble focusing, or perhaps they are hyper focusing on something, perhaps they're disengaging from something that I know they usually love, perhaps they've stopped talking about their own passions outside of work. And so it's been really important for me to think about, how do I connect with them, and how do I make sure that I'm connecting and talk about myself in a personal level to be able to pick up on some of those types of tells. But breaks are a really interesting thing. I'm a big advocate for taking breaks, and I try and make sure that I demonstrate that piece in my team as well, because I think it's easy when we're working from home to all of a sudden have your coffee or your tea in front of your laptop and your lunch in front of your laptop, or be sat looking at work all of the time. And so I'm really keen to make sure that as a team and as a group, we remember that actually it's absolutely fine if you want to do your grocery shop at 2 p.m. because the queues have been massive for ages, and actually that gives you a chance to take a step away and reflect on a meeting that you had that was particularly complex, or maybe people want to start early, finish late. So I think it's really important that we encourage that, but we also practice it ourselves. I think Club CISO said 61% of CISOs have reported an increase in stress. So we need to practice it too as leaders, and we need to make sure that our teams feel comfortable saying, hey, I need to take a break and step away.
Yeah. I think some of this comes down to trusting your employees that they do want to do the job and they will get it done. It's just they can't necessarily do it done in the 9 to 6 way that they used to do it, or 9 to 7, depending which companies you work for. That's really good. I'm interested, Tash, that steers us more into the kind of advice and what we can do, which I think is probably in the closing few minutes a good sort of territory to get into. Lisa, talk to us about that. If there's things that people watching, either from a freelance solo person perspective are interested in, or from a corporate perspective are interested in, what do you think would be the advice you'd give?
Sure. I mean, I could share a few things that I do that hopefully will be able to help. And it's kind of echoing in from a lot of what Tash said, because when lockdown started, I put my hands up to it. I got into some awful bad habits of trying to cram in as much work as possible, not taking those breaks, not stepping away from the screen, eating my lunch at the screen, and so on. So I've taken a step back and gone, no, I'm having those breaks. I'm walking away. I tried to go out with my dog for walks 2-3 times a day. Unfortunately, in the last 2-3 weeks, she's been poorly and on crate rest and not able to walk. And I find it difficult to go out and walk for myself. But I've done a few things, and I'm really lucky to be able to have the ability to do this in terms of installing a few things in my house. So I've got a treadmill and a cross trainer and the conservatory into a bit of a gym. So I'll go in there in the morning, and instead of the walking at the moment, I'll do some exercise. Just bought the Nintendo Ring system to do some exercise and so on that way, so I'm not missing going to the gym, and rather than sort of working it late into the evenings and so on, which is what I was being guilty of doing as well, I've made a conscious effort to stop at 5:30 every evening, no matter what else I'm doing, obviously within reason. If there's a call I've got to have that's time dependent, if it's in the USA or something, that's different, I'll do it, but my husband and I will always have that time together in the evenings, and I think that really helps as well, because we download about our day and what we're doing and so on, and we're trying to think of other things creatively that we can do in our house. So as I speak, my husband's transforming one of our rooms into a retro computer room, and we have a BBC Micro in there, 2 Amiga 2000 that's just arrived, another on the way,
I think,
a couple of PlayStations, games consoles, and honestly, as I speak, he is in that room.
Projects
So,
definitely help, having a project to work on.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. This is why it annoyed me when there was a sense of, Britain, go back to work. You've been at home sort of skiving. And I sort of thought to myself, no, the problem is, people don't know when to stop, because nobody kicks you out of the office. The lights don't go off at home at 7 o'clock or whatever. The cleaners come in, Simon, let's go to you. I mean, how do you think companies and your contacts and colleagues and so on that you deal with could shift to take account of these things?
I think, well, that's a really tough question. Obviously, as a freelance, you bring somebody in to come and solve a problem. You wring every last ounce out of them.
Exactly.
And then you chuck them back out the door again. Tasha's laughing. I'm not sure she should be laughing. But I mean, I'm back to that vulnerability thing. I am me. I've been around long enough now that actually I know my skills. I know what I'm good at. I know my weaknesses. I know my vulnerabilities, and I'm absolutely comfortable with all that. Because if I can't be at this time in life, I'm never going to be. And actually, so working with clients, it's I think as a personal responsibility for me, it's like the thing I said about, I'm dyslexic. Can we just slow this down?
Banging it up, yeah.
Or actually, I need a break now. There is no harm, and any organisation that's worth working for will always appreciate you being honest, saying, "Can we just take 10 minutes?"
Yeah.
If you said, "Can I take 10 minutes? I need to nip to the loo or grab a coffee," no one would bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
Saying, "Can I take 10? I need to go and get a breath of air. There's been a lot going on in this room, a lot of energy that I've got to process. I just want to get my thoughts." Because one thing about dyslexia is you have lots of really messy thinking. I need to go and just walk on a block and get some thoughts together. And I think actually you're then taking responsibility for your feelings, responsibility for your energy levels and managing it. And I've never had a client who's ever had an issue with it. I found it more an issue in the corporate world, where some organizations still have presenteeism. As long as you're sat at a desk, it doesn't matter if you're asleep, you're sat at the desk, so they're all happy. And that's such an antiquated way of dealing with things. From an organizational perspective, it's that trust. Now, we talk a lot about bringing your whole self to work. Now, some people don't want to, and they want to be private, and that's absolutely fine. That's a personal choice. But if you have a relationship with your boss or the organization is very open about, hey, guys, just be honest with us, that's really, really helpful. And you mentioned the comment about the trusting people when they work from home. If you don't trust your staff, are you employing the right people? Are you saying that your recruitment decisions are poor? Which that would say, if you've got someone there who doesn't really want to be working for you, then actually you've made a bad decision.
It's a good point. Yeah, fantastic. Manoj, let's come to you. If there's an organisation that's watching that maybe doesn't have mega budget, but wants to do something about this and appreciates their teams need help with this, where's a good place to start, do you think, from your experience?
So there's some really good kind of resources available. I mean, charities have a whole range of different resources. Charities like Mind, particularly things like the Employee Assistance Program. It's another thing that's really good, where employees can phone helplines and it's all confidential and they can get some help there. But there's also a range of applications. So there's lots of different talking therapies, CBT programs, applications such as Buddhify and meditation type things. And also, I think some companies have also started doing virtual yoga sessions and various different things. So I think there's a range of different options available to companies. I think what we have to recognize is everybody is individual. So what works for one person might not work for another. I know some of my team, for instance, have been doing lots of activities. I think it's great to hear about Lisa's activities. I'm really jealous about her retro games room. I think when
we all want to see the retro games room,
it's fantastic. But I mean, I've got some of my team members that have started knitting, and some have gone for walks. So there's a swimming. I think I've started colouring and doing puzzles, which I never thought I'd do. So lots of things to take you out of those stressful environments and to get you back into the present.
So you don't necessarily need to sort of sign up to a project or pay consultants to come in or anything like that. There's stuff you can do, sort of just encouraging activities and staff and taking an interest in that.
Absolutely.
You don't need to buy in a service to do it.
No, and I don't think so. And I think there's other things like the mental health first aider courses. I think, again, where companies really want to invest in having individuals that they can kind of get the training, get the certificates, but also be able to reduce that stigma and provide that support. I think that's something we're seeing a lot of organizations get into. And I found it personally just a fantastic course to do as well. It was really, really useful.
Just a ringing endorsement for that, and you're not the only one who's doing that. Well, I have to say, I mean, when I worked at ITN, we obviously saw some quite rough footage, and I made use of the ITN employee assistance phone line, and by God, I'm glad I did. It really helped talk me down on that particular day. And I wonder also, just reflecting on this, whether in the future for employees, if you can say, well, actually, look, we do take mental health quite seriously, and we've got this, and we've got this, and we do this. I wonder whether that will help your recruitment as well, because I suspect as mental health goes up the agenda, employees will start looking out for it in the way they look out for lots of benefits, you know, pensions and so on. So hopefully there's a rosy future there. Before we're out of time on that, it's a fascinating subject. I'm sure we should have talked a lot more, and there'll be other stuff in the Cyber House Party on this subject. But thank you for joining us, and also thank you to our panelists so much. Thanks, Lisa Ventura, Tash Norris, Manoj Bhatt, and Simon Lacey. Enjoy the rest of the event, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks.